example of gatekeeping skills. Now, when we're talking about gatekeeping skills, what we're talking about is access, right? If a caller who's a native monolingual speaker of your L2 calls an organization, and all you can do is get a correctly spelled name and an accurate phone number or email address, and then pass that message along to a more fluent speaker of that person's native language, you've granted them access to that organization where they otherwise would have been hung up on and therefore denied access. And the same goes for you accessing an organization in your L2. You call, you have limited skills, but you can leave your name and number so that someone who speaks your L1 can then call you back. You've granted yourself access. And we know when we're dealing with vulnerable communities, immigrant communities, minority language communities, that access is really important. So even though this is a simple activity, we're getting at these really high-level things that we value as language educators, right? And so gatekeeping is basically that, right? At the lowest levels, just taking accurate contact information to pass on to more fluent speakers. By the intermediate level, students should be able to take a very brief message. And the ability to get a brief message requires analysis and synthesis skills. Again, those higher order skills that we really value in the humanities. And here we have a concrete, real world workplace example of that. People always leave more information than you need to actually put in the message. We all do that when we're leaving messages. And then at the highest levels, at advanced levels, students should be able to have fully fleshed out professional conversations. So the advantage here and the heading here about numbers and letters being the building blocks of communication, that's sort of the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s that we often go over way too quickly and neglect in language education, partly because we're dealing with adolescent and young adult learners, and you don't want to use those preschool songs and counting games to get that repetitive practice and really become fluent in the building blocks. Well, here, taking phone messages is a great substitute for that, right? If at the end of every unit or every week or every other week in class, students are practicing leaving and taking phone messages and spelling names and hearing names spelled and saying and writing down numbers, they'll become fluent. And so what I do is I will, sometimes I just let students take a message, sort of winging it, and collect that message as sort of a pre-test so that at the end of the course, I can show them how far they've come. Say, look, here's what you took on day 1 or week 1. It's unintelligible. Here's what you were able to do in 30 seconds at the end of the course. Look how far you've come. And this is now a skill that you can put on your professional resume, right? That you were able to take a name and number, right? And you don't want to claim you can do more than you can do, but you can confidently say that you can do that now. And it's a concrete skill that looks good on a resume or in a cover letter or in a job interview. And the strategies that I equip my students with on the very first or second at the latest phone message that they take is you have to take control of that conversation. So you have to get the information in a way that's understandable to you. So that means to ask people, how do you spell that? I got the first name, what's the last name? I got the last name, what's the first name? Can you say that one number at a time, please? I'm going to repeat that back to you. Is this correct? Right? And if they have those 3 fixed expressions, they can take control and get a name and a number. I do not accept any global requests for repetition. You cannot say what, repeat, repeat. That's the deer in the headlight strategy. It's the first instinct for all of us, right? To not take control, but it doesn't work very well. People will just keep repeating the content that you didn't understand. So as soon as students get fluent in those 3 strategies, one student asks the question, but everybody benefits as they're taking the message. Then by the 3rd, 4th, 5th message, I can give it out to a leader in each group so they can practice leaving and taking those phone messages. So it's really good practice for students. They get a concrete professional skill that they can put on their resumes. And as they advance, you can add even more strategies, like the equivalent in English of, is that with an F or a PH if you hear the F sound, or 1-5 or 5-0 for that difficult to understand 15 or 50. So sometimes when students seem capable and willing to add more strategies, I add those language-specific strategies. Now, 3 really important things I want to say about our students and phone skills. First, many of our students need to develop phone skills because they didn't have the opportunity to develop them incidentally like the older generations, like my generation, did when we called our friends on a corded phone and had to get through those adult gatekeepers to get to our friends. So we learned that vocabulary of, good evening, Mrs. Hughes, is Debbie available, or whatever. So our students grow up in a text world, we put them in that text world, but they probably don't have as polished phone skills as we did. Number 2, entry-level jobs now often do require a 4-year degree. So some of our students probably are going to start their careers as administrative assistants and really need good phone skills in their first and their second language. And students will tell you this with all of these skills. Like, I use it all the time in English, just nobody ever told me the best way to do these things, right? And then the third piece is that even if all of your students are going to go on to be doctors and lawyers and CEOs, those people need phone skills. When you're waiting on the results of a pathology report, you want your doctor to call you back. The doctor's office receptionist doesn't call patients to tell them the results of their pathology report. Your doctor needs really good phone skills to be able to deliver that information to you. Same with a lawyer. The law firm receptionist is not calling the provost of the university about the $500 an hour work that lawyer is doing for the university. That attorney has to have those phone skills. And CEOs close deals over the phone all the time. So these are really important skills for really important jobs that we hope our students are going to